Some of the most normal 1970s dishes would get you fined or even jailed today. Stay with me, because by the end you'll know which beloved bites crossed the legal line and the one shocker that flipped from banned to allowed. Remember when dinner felt simple? When mom could throw together a meal without fretting over food safety codes, endangered species lists, or health department notices? So dust off your bell-bottoms and fire up that avocado-colored stove as we look back at dishes from the 1970s that you really cannot serve anymore. Tiger meat sandwiches. This one was not made from actual tigers. Tiger meat was a Midwestern party specialty, especially in the 1970s. A spread of raw ground beef seasoned with onion, salt, pepper, and sometimes raw egg, served on rye or crackers at gatherings. Now, serving raw ground beef would run afoul of food safety rules in most jurisdictions. The United States Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration strongly warn against eating raw meat because of the risk of E. coli, salmonella, and other dangerous pathogens. Health departments would move quickly against any business serving tiger meat sandwiches, and organizers could face serious legal trouble for offering them at a public event. What used to be a favored party nibble is today treated as a major food safety violation. Sea turtle soup. In the 1970s, sea turtle soup still appeared on menus at upscale restaurants and in specialty shops, especially in coastal regions with strong maritime culinary traditions. This rich soup, frequently made from green sea turtle meat, was viewed as a delicacy and a marker of status dating back centuries. Although the Endangered Species Act was passed in 1973, enforcement took time to catch up, and turtle populations kept falling through that decade. Today, all sea turtle species are protected under the Endangered Species Act and international agreements. Hunting, killing, disturbing, or eating sea turtles or their eggs is prohibited, and violations carry heavy fines and possible imprisonment. What once signified culinary refinement is now a wildlife crime. Unpasteurized dairy products. In the 1970s, many rural families continued to drink raw, unpasteurized milk and consume raw cheeses and other dairy products from their own cows or from local farmers. Raw milk was readily available and seen as normal, especially outside major metropolitan areas. Today, selling unpasteurized milk for drinking is illegal in many states, and interstate sales are barred by federal law. The Food and Drug Administration has concluded that raw milk can contain dangerous bacteria such as Listeria, Salmonella, and E. coli. A few states allow limited raw milk sales under strict rules, and breaking those rules can bring heavy penalties. The casual drinking of unpasteurized dairy that was common in the 1970s would now likely run afoul of multiple food safety regulations. Homemade beef jerky for sale. In the 1970s, people often sold homemade beef jerky at local markets, roadside stands, and in some small grocery stores. Many families guarded recipes passed down through generations, and making jerky was both a preservation method and a way to earn extra money. Today, selling homemade jerky without proper facilities, inspections, and licenses would break food safety rules in most places. Meat products face especially strict oversight because of the risk of foodborne illness. Commercial jerky makers must use inspected facilities, follow HACCP plans, and perform regular testing. The neighborhood jerky vendor of the 1970s would now need substantial investment in licensed facilities and regulatory compliance to sell legally. Whale meat steaks. While not widespread in most American homes, whale meat remained legally obtainable in some markets in the early 1970s, notably in places with whaling histories or immigrant communities from whaling countries. This dark, beef-like meat was often served as steaks or roasts. The Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972 made a decisive change by banning the hunting, killing, capture, or harassment of marine mammals in United States waters. That was followed by the International Whaling Commission's Global Commercial Whaling Moratorium in 1986. Today, possessing or eating whale meat in the United States is illegal, with the narrow exception of limited subsistence hunts by Alaskan Native communities. If you sat down to a 1970s dinner and someone brought out tiger meat sandwiches or sea turtle soup, what would you have said? And which of these dishes did your family actually serve? Share your story below. Eagle eggs. Benedict, what was once an unusual but lawful dining choice, is now a grave wildlife offense with severe penalties. This entry is partly hypothetical because bald eagle eggs were already protected in the 1970s. Still, the Endangered Species Act of 1973 greatly increased protections for eagles and many other species. Prior to those stronger federal safeguards, there are historical accounts of eagle eggs being collected and eaten, in particular within certain Native American traditions. Today, however, disturbing eagle nests or possessing eagle parts, including eggs, without specially issued permits that are mostly limited to members of federally recognized tribes for religious reasons, is a serious federal crime under both the Endangered Species Act and the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. Convictions can lead to prison sentences and large fines. This example shows how wildlife protection laws have become far more comprehensive and more strictly enforced since the 1970s. Red fish blackened in cast iron. In the 1970s, Louisiana chef Paul Prudhomme introduced his now famous blackened red fish recipe, and it became a national craze. Restaurants all over the country hurried to put this spicy charred fish on their menus, and home cooks tried to copy the effect in their own pans. The dish's popularity had serious consequences. By the mid-1980s, redfish, also called red drum, in the Gulf of Mexico had been fished down to dangerously low numbers. In 1987, commercial harvest of redfish was banned in federal waters, and many states added strict rules. Today, recreational anglers may catch redfish in some areas under tight limits, but the commercial sale of wild-caught Gulf redfish is largely illegal. That signature blackened red fish that lit up so many dinner parties in the 1970s would now expose someone selling it commercially to heavy fines. Passenger pigeon pie. Just kidding on this one. Passenger pigeons had already vanished by the 1970s, their extinction occurring in 1914 after relentless overhunting. That loss illustrates how our relationship with food has shifted. In the 19th century, passenger pigeon was an everyday ingredient, commonly baked into pies. By the 1970s, that once abundant bird was only a memory, a warning about unsustainable harvesting. Its disappearance helped fuel the conservation movement that eventually produced protections for many species. Today, taking any migratory bird without the proper permits violates the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and offenders can face fines and jail time. The casual hunting of wild birds that was routine in earlier American history is now tightly regulated. Home butchered venison. In rural America in the 1970s, hunting season meant stocking the freezer. Many households supplemented their diets with venison, and the rules governing hunting, butchering, and sharing game meat were considerably looser. Hunters commonly dressed and processed their own deer at home and shared meat with neighbors and extended family with little paperwork or oversight. Today, hunting is still widespread, but the regulatory framework is much tighter. Most states now require specific permits not only to hunt, but also for processing game. There are detailed rules about how venison may be shared. In many states, giving wild game meat to anyone beyond the hunter's immediate family is prohibited unless proper documentation exists. Selling wild harvested venison commercially is illegal across the nation. The informal backyard deer processing and neighborhood meat sharing that were commonplace in the 1970s could now run afoul of a number of wildlife and food safety laws. Home-canned foods without modern safety protocols. The 1970s also saw a renewed interest in home canning as part of the Back to the Land movement. But safety standards were much less advanced then. Many households used older methods passed down through families instead of procedures validated by scientific testing. Open kettle canning, pouring hot food into jars without further processing, remained a frequent practice for a number of foods. Today, selling home-canned goods without following approved United States Department of Agriculture guidelines and without proper licensing, inspection, and testing would violate food safety laws in most places. Commercial sale of home-canned, low-acid items like vegetables, meats, and soups is especially restricted because of the botulism risk. The informal home canning operations that filled many 1970s pantries would now likely breach several health codes if those products were offered for sale. Horse meat steaks. In the 1970s, horse meat was still legally available in parts of the United States. It was never as widely eaten as beef, but it was an acceptable, if somewhat unusual, choice. Some specialty butchers stocked horse meat, and it remained popular in certain immigrant communities with traditions of consuming it. The situation shifted significantly in 2007 when Congress effectively banned horse slaughter for human consumption by cutting federal inspection funding for horse slaughter plants. That ban has been allowed to lapse and has been reinstated at times, but public pressure and state laws have kept horse meat off most American tables. At present, there are no operating horse slaughter facilities in the United States, and selling horse meat for people to eat would violate the laws in many states. What had been an alternative red meat option in the 1970s would be extremely difficult or impossible to buy legally today. Moonshine. Homemade moonshine was common in the 1970s, especially in rural areas where home distilling was a strong tradition. Although it was technically unlawful even then, enforcement was inconsistent, and many people distilled at home for their own use or for small local distribution. Nowadays, federal and state laws against unlicensed alcohol production are enforced much more strictly. Making spirits without the required licenses and tax payments is a federal crime that can lead to felony charges, with penalties including up to 5 years in prison and large fines. While laws around home beer and wine production have relaxed, the ban on home distilling remains firm. That mason jar of Grandpa's special recipe from the 1970s could now produce serious legal trouble. Absinthe cocktails. In the 1970s, true absinthe remained banned in the United States, as it had been since 1912, but imported bottles still circulated underground, particularly within artistic and countercultural scenes. The anise-flavored spirit, wrapped in lore about supposed hallucinogenic effects, was an attractive, forbidden indulgence. Ironically, absinthe is legal in the United States again since 2007, provided it meets FDA regulations concerning thujone levels. That represents a reversal. Something illegal in the 1970s is lawful today. Still, homemade absinthe recipes that circulated in the 1970s, sometimes containing dangerous amounts of toxic compounds, would remain illegal under modern food safety rules. This example shows how regulation can evolve to address specific harmful elements instead of imposing total bans. Imported haggis. Traditional Scottish haggis, a savory pudding of sheep heart, liver, and lungs, minced with onion, oatmeal, suet, and spices, and packed in the animal's stomach, was still being imported into the United States in the 1970s. Scottish-American families could obtain authentic haggis for Burns Night celebrations and other occasions. In 1971, the United States Department of Agriculture banned the use of livestock lungs in food products. Then, in 1989, imported haggis that contained sheep lungs was barred because of concerns about scrapie, a disease of sheep. As a result, authentic Scottish haggis cannot legally be brought into the United States today. American-made versions that omit lungs are sold here, but purists insist they are not the same. The genuine haggis that once appeared on Scottish-American tables in the 1970s would now be confiscated by customs agents. Unpasteurized milk cheese aged less than 60 days. In the 1970s, rules around cheese production, especially raw milk cheeses, were looser. Both imported and domestic cheeses made from unpasteurized milk with short aging periods were commonly available, and their distinctive flavors were part of the culinary scene. Today, the Food and Drug Administration forbids the sale of raw milk cheeses aged less than 60 days. That effectively prevents many traditional European soft cheeses from being sold in their original form. Cheeses offered in the United States must either be made with pasteurized milk or be aged longer than traditional methods call for, which changes their characteristic textures and flavors. The authentic raw milk brys that diners enjoyed in the 1970s would now fail to meet current food safety rules if sold as they were originally produced. Homemade cough syrup with codeine. In some households during the 1970s, especially in rural areas or families with European practices, homemade cough remedies that contained small amounts of codeine or other controlled substances were still sometimes prepared. Although prescriptions for codeine existed, enforcement was less strict, and some families kept using traditional medicinal recipes handed down over generations. Today, producing any medicine that contains controlled substances without proper pharmaceutical licensing would breach numerous federal and state laws and carry serious criminal penalties. The Drug Enforcement Administration and the Food and Drug Administration tightly regulate even tiny amounts of codeine and related substances. The homemade remedies that grandmothers might have mixed up in the 1970s could now lead to charges for drug manufacturing. Authentic sassafras root tea. Sassafras tea, brewed from the roots of the sassafras tree, was a traditional folk beverage and remedy in many parts of America. Throughout the 1970s, people still dug up sassafras roots to brew this fragrant tea, especially across the South and in Appalachian areas. In 1976, the Food and Drug Administration banned sassafras root for food use after studies found that safrole, a major ingredient in sassafras oil, caused cancer in laboratory animals. Selling traditional sassafras root tea or foods that contain actual sassafras root oil today would violate those FDA regulations. Modern sassafras flavorings are made with the safrole removed. The natural sassafras root tea that many households used as a home remedy in the early 1970s is effectively prohibited from commercial sale now. Roadkill stew. In rural parts of America during the 1970s, it was not unusual for people to salvage meat from animals struck and killed on roadways. That waste, not want not approach showed up especially during hard economic times, and roadkill deer, rabbit, and other animals sometimes found their way into family stews and roasts. Today, salvaging roadkill is tightly regulated in most states. Some states have specific roadkill salvage laws that allow the practice under certain conditions, typically requiring permits and reporting, while many states still forbid it outright. In places without explicit authorization, tacking roadkill without proper permission can violate wildlife laws. The casual roadside harvesting that some rural families practiced in the 1970s would now be illegal in many jurisdictions unless done with the correct permit. Unregulated wild mushroom foraging. In the 1970s, as interest in foraging and natural foods grew, many amateur mushroom hunters gathered wild fungi to add to family meals. Regulation of wild mushroom sales was minimal then, and home-gathered mushrooms might be shared at community events or even sold informally to local restaurants. Today, selling wild-foraged mushrooms is tightly controlled in most states. Commercial sale usually requires proper identification by certified experts, and health departments enforce strict rules about the mushrooms restaurants use. While personal consumption of self-foraged mushrooms remains legal, though risky without proper knowledge, the casual selling or public serving of wild mushrooms that occurred in the 1970s would now violate food safety regulations in many jurisdictions. Raw oyster platters. In the 1970s, oyster fans ate these salty treats all year with little worry about seasonal safety. The old rule of only eating oysters in months with the letter R from September through April was frequently ignored as refrigeration and transportation got better. Today, raw oyster sales are tightly regulated, especially for oysters taken from Gulf Coast waters during the warm months, roughly May through October, because Vibrio vulnificus bacteria grows in warmer water. Some states ban the sale of raw Gulf oysters in summer months unless the oysters have gone through special processing to remove bacteria. The casual summer oyster stands of the 1970s would now run into major regulatory obstacles and possible legal trouble for selling untreated raw oysters during months when that is prohibited. Chitlins prepared without health department oversight. Chitlins, or chitterlings, are cleaned and cooked pig intestines and have long been a traditional dish in Southern and African American cuisine. In the 1970s, chitlin suppers were common community gatherings, often made in home kitchens or community centers without specific health department oversight. Today, commercial chitlin preparation is subject to strict food safety rules because of the risk of bacterial contamination, particularly Yersinia and Toxoplasma. Restaurants and other food service operations that serve chitlins must follow particular cleaning, preparation, and cooking protocols. While preparing food at home for family use is still lawful, the chitlin supper of the 1970s would, under current rules, need formal food service permits, inspected facilities, and compliance with specific safety protocols to be legal in most places. Unprocessed fruit dishes. In the 1970s, as Caribbean immigration rose, some U.S. communities preserved traditional food practices, including dishes made with ackee, a fruit native to West Africa, and a mainstay of Jamaican cooking. At that time, American regulators were not broadly aware of the fruit's possible toxicity. Today, the Food and Drug Administration strictly regulates ackee because when unripe or improperly prepared, it can be toxic. The fruit contains hypoglycin, which can lead to Jamaican vomiting sickness, a condition that can be fatal. Fresh ackee imports are tightly limited, and only certain processed forms from approved facilities are allowed. Ackee grown at home or informally imported, what might have been present in some immigrant communities in the 1970s, would now run afoul of FDA import rules. Home-brewed kombucha with high alcohol content. In the 1970s, as interest in natural foods and world cuisines expanded, some health food enthusiasts began brewing kombucha at home. Lacking modern testing tools, these homebrewers sometimes produced kombucha with substantial alcohol levels through extended fermentation. Under current rules, kombucha that contains more than 0.5% alcohol by volume is treated as an alcoholic beverage, which triggers licensing, taxation, and age restriction requirements for sale. Commercial kombucha manufacturers must routinely test their products and either keep alcohol below that threshold or follow alcohol beverage regulations. The strong homebrews of kombucha that some enthusiasts shared in the 1970s would today potentially violate alcohol production and distribution laws if sold or distributed without the proper licenses. Homemade infant formula. In the 1970s, some mothers prepared homemade baby formulas from evaporated milk, corn syrup, and vitamin supplements, using recipes provided by pediatricians or handed down in families. Although commercial formulas existed, they were sometimes avoided because of cost or personal preference. Today, making and selling homemade infant formula would violate Food and Drug Administration regulations. Medical authorities advise strongly against sharing recipes for homemade infant formula because of serious safety and nutritional risks. Commercial infant formulas are required to satisfy strict safety and nutritional regulations. Formulas that some families used in the 1970s would now be judged potentially hazardous by medical experts, and selling those homemade recipes commercially would be illegal today. If you enjoy these true kitchen dramas and family table controversies, subscribe for more, and share this with someone who still remembers the avocado green fridge.